Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm thrilled to be here. It's 80 degrees, we're in LA, the Rams are in the Super Bowl, things are looking really good, but appreciate everybody joining us. I'm really excited to be joined by Matt and Carlo today to talk about sports marketing in general. Obviously, all excited about the Super Bowl. We're going to unpack what State Farm is doing this year. We're going to talk about the great work that 72andSunny has done with the league as well. But before we get started, I thought it would be great for both Matt and Carlo to get a little bit more color about the roles that you guys play within the organizations and kind of how that all transcends what we're talking about today.
Great. So, hey, good morning, everybody. I'll go ahead and kick this off, Carlo, and we'll kick it over to you. So, I'm responsible for media sponsorships and digital marketing at State Farm. So, from a media standpoint, that is all of our branding and acquisition media. So, when you guys are reading about numerator data that suggests that State Farm is one of the highest spenders or top 10 spender, regardless of category, that's the responsibility that I have. Also responsible for sponsorship, so that includes our team deals, our league deals, as well as our venue deals. And also responsible for digital marketing, primarily getting us stood up on various platforms, whether it's Tic Tac, Snap, or anything else. And then there's a performance marketing component of that I'm responsible for too. So, so lots to keep you busy.
And my role is co-chief creative officer. It means like I oversee the creative work across the different offices of the company in North America and Europe as well. I've been with the company for about 12 years. And my experience has been, across a lot of different clients, but a lot of sports clients and a lot of clients that are endemic to sport, but also are part of sport events like the Super Bowl, being endemic to sports. So I have a long experience around large events and working on brands that contribute to the entertainment and the event.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's what's so cool because, again, this week is all about the NFL. It's all about the Super Bowl. Everybody's excited about that and talking about that. But both of your organizations have rich histories in sports in general, beyond just the NFL. So, Matt, I'd love to start with you just to talk a little bit more about State Farm's history in sports marketing, because obviously, yes, this is NFL week. There's a lot of great stuff happening. You have a rich history with organizations like the NBA. You have the All-Star Weekend coming up next weekend, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on there, and you guys have a really deep history there. Would love to learn a little bit more about the genesis of that and kind of how that has transformed over the years and kind of brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Andrei. Yeah, State Farm, as you said, has been involved in sports for quite some time now. So, from a football standpoint, we're not the official marketing partner in the NFL, but we are in the NBA. But that said, we try to leverage the NFL environment as best we can. So we have, two great athletes, right, in Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, that have been great for us in terms of brand notoriety and building, awareness and consideration. So very excited about the partnership that we have with those guys. And I mentioned, our partnership deals that we have in venues. One of those is with State Farm Stadium out in Phoenix with Cardinals. So we had a chance to do some really cool things with those guys there, and it's been great for our brand. You mentioned the NBA, we're official marketing partner for the NBA. So we have everything that comes with it, right? So there's access to VIP. There's the signage that you guys see on the stanchions whenever you see anybody dunk the basketball. It's all of those types of things. But then, along with that, you have All-Star Weekend, which is next weekend. And so, I think people probably primarily know us for our relationship with the NBA proper, but we also have really strong relationships with the WNBA, the G League. And so we just think of it as the entire NBA family, and we try to build on our relationship there. So Major League Baseball, we're involved in baseball, NCAA sports as well. So we have, like you said, a deep history when it comes to sports, and I think it's one of the last bastions of live, like engaging live entertainment. And so that's where consumers are, and that's where we want to be. So I think you're going to see us there for a while.
Yeah, and it's cool too, because when you think about sports, the beauty of them is they're live, they're relevant right now in the moment. But as a brand marketer, it takes a lot of consideration in that strategy, right? So there's the pre, during, post, right? Things are going to happen. Your athletes may do things that surprise you in a good way or not so good way. So I'd be curious just to get a few more thoughts just on that strategy, right? When you're thinking about, here's the stuff we know we can control in the beginning, the things we think will happen. but then the things actually happen, and how do you kind of game plan for that, and then pivot towards what may come after?
Yeah, I think a really good example of that was week 9. So every year we are pulling for the State Farm Bowl, right? So that's Aaron Rodgers playing Patrick Mahomes at, in the Super Bowl. Like we pull for that every year. We actually make plans for that every year. Hasn't quite worked out for us, but no, it's something that we think about a lot. And so for us, we're always wanting to make sure that whenever our guys are playing each other, that we have a presence there, a significant presence there. So this year, both the Packers and the Chiefs played week 9, and so we had the State Farm football fine, right? So you had an opportunity to go out find footballs, almost like a Pokemon Go kind of way, right? So you can go out and find footballs, and then you can exchange those for merch, right? Whether it was physical merch or actual NFTs, and there were a number of other virtual options that people had. And so, to your point about not, having plans and maybe those plans not going as you intended, Aaron didn't play in that game, right? And so everything that we did leading up to that game, when we were going to feature Aaron and Patrick, we had to pivot because Aaron wasn't, going to be playing, during week 9. So you had to make those types of adjustments, and so. Just dealing with sports in general and maybe athletes more specifically, it can be a bit of a challenge because a lot of those things are outside of your control, which is why we are so grateful to have a brand ambassador in Jake, that has been a boon for us in terms of the way that he's engaged others and how people are receiving him. So we're going to continue to have relationships with athletes. I think there's a lot of value in doing that. But I think what you're going to see from us moving forward is maybe us lean into Jake a little bit more than we have.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're going to get into Jake later. The Jake story is still fascinating me, and I'd love to unpack that further. But before we do so, Carlo, you too have a rich history at 72andSunny with the NFL, particularly with last year's Super Bowl with the NFL plus live film execution. So I'd love if you can elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, no, as Matt was saying, I think sports marketing keeps you on your toes, because when you deal with live events, it's a different thing. And I think it's how you're working with athletes is a mix of proactive and reactive. And with the NFL, I think in the last couple of years, actually, we've done some incredible pre-game performances. Both we had films that ended up being a live experience on the field, and both those campaigns were incredibly orchestrated, and there are so many things you need to consider. But in general, I think, again, as Matt was saying, working with live events, working with athletes, working with tournaments requires so much attention and so much preparation, because you need to be prepared for what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So you might lose an athlete along the way, things can change. We also have at 72andSunny a long history with Nike first and Adidas doing World Cup campaigns, and you have teams getting eliminated, so your program changes, and the next day you have to come up with something new. And I think it's an amazing exercise, and I think the best brands are ready. Get ready for the events and prepare just like the teams themselves. When you go into a Super Bowl or a World Cup, it's just like an athletic performance for marketing. So it's exciting because everything will go well, and sometimes things can go wrong.
Yeah, it's true, and that's what makes it fun and interesting, and probably a little bit stressful at times. But the importance of athletes and just personas for brands in general is clearly something that's not going away anytime soon. In fact, all we see is, whether it be on the sports side, brands leaning into them more heavily, but also now these personas that are being created outside of their brand personas in general that kind of work to humanize the brand. And now we kind of transition a little bit into Jake, just because it's so interesting. But State Farm obviously competes in a highly competitive industry. Right, there's personas across multiple of your largest competitors. Jake is like this cultural phenomenon right now. It feels like the moment of Jake is like now. It's kind of all happening. So everything from SNL appearances to we'll talk about the TikTok Super Bowl challenge later. But the most interesting part about that is that you're not as dependent on the athletic performance of the athletes that you sponsor on field. This is somebody who can kind of build up and kind of control the narrative in a way. So, you know, I'd love to hear just a bit more about Jake, kind of how he came to be, what he's done for State Farm, particularly on the cultural side, because Jake is just as relevant. Yeah, he's now integrated in a lot of what you do in sports, but that's almost secondary to what he's done for the brand culturally. So I just love to listen more about that.
Yeah, you bet. So I forget who I was talking to at dinner last night about this, but people love Jake. I think part of it is that Kevin, his name is Kevin Mons, right? Kevin's just a really nice guy. Like, I mean, he's a genuinely good dude. So it starts with that, right? So for us, we have a number of distinct brand assets that we leverage at any given time, right? It's the ovals, it's the jingle, it's the red shirt with the khaki pants. But another distinct brand asset is Jake. So we did our Jake State Farm ad years ago, right? And we said, hey, you know what? There's a lot of equity in that character. And so we decided to cast for that character because the original Jake he's a claim rep, right? He works in the contact center. He's not an actor, right? So it'd be difficult for somebody like that to really take that role and make it what Jake has. So when we cast for the role, there were a number of people who actually auditioned for it. And Jake he jumped off the screen, right? And we were also looking for some diversity in terms of who's representing our brand. And aside from what we saw in Jake in terms of how he carries himself, we thought that he was going to be a really good draw in terms of engaging people, right? Because of the type of personality that he has. And so we've been able to place Jake in a number of environments, whether it's on television where you probably see him the most, but for any of you gamers out there, he's in 2K, in NBA 2K. He's I think the first non-playable character, at least in our category for sure. You can actually go to the NBA Village and you can buy State Farm merch from him. I mean, so we're putting him in a number of places. He's actually a gamer himself, and so there's some things that we're doing with him that are native to him. And he's just such a versatile talent to work with. And to your point, he's been excellent for our brand, right? Because people can relate to him, right? So there are things that he does and says that just feel natural. It doesn't feel forced. And people can engage with him in real ways. If you ever have an opportunity to see this guy in real life and meet him and shake his hand, I mean, you'll see the type of personality that he has. So what you guys are seeing, whether it's on social or it's on television, it's genuine. And so we're feeling really good about what Jake's done for us, and I'm really excited that he's a part of the team.
Yeah, and it really is that authenticity, I think, that does shine through. And again, we'll talk about it more with the Super Bowl stuff, but just the conversation that Jake alone generates for the brand is super compelling. And Carlo, you guys also have a great example at 72andSunny with the World Cup a few years back, just dealing with flexibility in working with athletes. So it would be great if you could elaborate a little bit more just on that experience.
Yeah, I think, Jake, actually, people were freaking out when they found him on NBA 2K. It was an amazing integration. But in general, using Jake has been very smart because, again, you don't depend on athlete results or team results anymore. And I think you contribute to the game, and you contribute with, you come in from a different side, but you're still authentic. You're still part of it, which I think it's a very good learning in sports marketing. And Adidas, for example, is a brand we worked for them for a few years, and what they did is they brought a lot of different athletes and non-athletes to sport. So, for example, a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, for the World Cup, we created this campaign where you had footballers, people from the NBA, the NFL, musicians, all in the same story. And I think through an algorithm that I don't know how to explain, we created an enormous number of versions of the commercial that would play at different stages. So the work wasn't dependent on the success of the athlete, but it was self-standing. And again, Adidas managed, and we worked on that a lot, to also elevate non-athletes into the sports world, which I think is what State Farm is doing with Jake. So bringing another element to sport helps really, because, you know, athletes are also overexposed. Athletes have, you know, a lot of things to do, and it's sometimes good to create other property, your own properties, to be in the world and do it authentically. I think what State Farm is doing really well also is that most of what they do is connected to the sport, so they found their role. And I think, you know, Adidas again is a sport endemic brand, but I think amplifying what they do in sport was the right thing to bring in more to the table.
Yeah, particularly because you only have so much time. You have a finite amount of time with those athletes to get all these things done. Your pre, during, and post. You may have a 2-week window or potentially less, right? So yeah, it's just a fascinating topic, and again, the innovation that we talked about there is just really cool, and I think it kind of brings us to kind of where we are today. You know, 2022 Super Bowl last year was State Farm's inaugural Super Bowl broadcast spot. This year, taking a wildly different approach with the Tic Tac challenge, and I'm excited to learn more about how we can all engage with it. But Matt, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about kind of how that came to be. And you know, with Jake, I was surprised to learn too his social following, how big that is, without any paid support. So it kind of runs into why this TikTok challenge is so relevant and timely. So thoughts on that to elaborate? I'm sure we'd all love to hear about it.
Yeah, so yeah, you mentioned the Super Bowl last year, right? So that was our first Super Bowl spot. And guys, we caught lightning in the bottle last year. So we had a great idea with Drake from State Farm. Drake did it. We didn't know that Drake was going to do it. And no, but he signed. Paul Rudd signed up, right? So you don't want to forget Paul. He's the sexiest man alive. That's true. Okay, all right. But it was a great concept, and it was intuitive to everyone that heard the pitch, including our chief marketing officer and the chief executive officer. It was a no-brainer, right? And so for us, so based on Ad Meter, I think we were the highest ranked first-time advertiser ever. On Twitter, we saw huge spikes in mentions on Twitter, not only the day of, but that trailed at least for the following week. We were really excited about that. But I think one of the things we were most excited about was the spike in quote volume that we saw, right? So we're in the business to drive quotes, right? Because quotes result in more folks that we're taking care of. And so we saw a spike in quotes as well. And so all signs pointed to it being a wildly successful event for us. The other thing, though, is that we wanted to use the Super Bowl last year as a platform to really introduce Jake to the U.S. So Jake had maybe been with us for maybe just over a year at the time. And there are a number of things that we've been doing with him, primarily in linear, and really just starting to get into digital. And so, yeah, we said, hey, we want to do this spot and want to use this as a way for people to really see Jake and really get to know him a little bit better. And that happened, right? So in terms of his other social accounts, we saw a huge spike in terms of followers on his other accounts. And even here recently with TikTok, we just got on TikTok here in mid-November. And Jake's following, I think he's over 250,000 followers on TikTok right now. And that's, to your point, it's all organic, right? So, you know, once we get a chance to put some paid behind it, I think it's just going to take off, like, because people they just love Jake and some of the things that he does out there. So yeah, but if you think about this year, we want to do something a little bit different, right? So last year was about introducing Jake to the US. This year was about giving people an opportunity to engage with the character that they've come to know, and in some cases y'all love. I have the comments. People are really into this guy. And so yeah, people want to engage with them. And so yeah, we have the TikTok challenge, right? So if you go to hashtag Team State Farm on TikTok, you can do a duet. You can submit a duet with Jake, and they're going to be judged, right? The top 3 folks that make it will then have an opportunity to be judged again. And then the winner of that is going to have an opportunity to do a commercial spot with Jake later this year. So, so there for folks who are out there that are really into Jake, right? I didn't mean it that way. That really like, you know, Jake and what he represents. It's going to give them a really cool opportunity to do a spot with him, right? And so we're really excited about that. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing kind of around the Super Bowl relative to that. So, you know, you mentioned we don't have a spot this year, but, you know, we're amplifying the hashtag Team State Farm through a variety of channels, including some influencers, some that are native to our environment, others who aren't necessarily native to our environment. And so, yeah, we're really excited about, you know, what we're doing this year on TikTok, and we'll be really interested to see how, you know, how the campaign performs relative to the projections that we have.
Yeah, which again is cool. It's a trend that we're starting to see happen. There's only a finite amount of spots in the game, right? There's only going to be X amount of brands that have the opportunity to do that. But when you're looking for the younger audience where they're spending time, things like TikTok, things like Twitter, things like Snap, etc., I feel like we're going to start to see more of these. And the creativity, the reason to engage, is going to have to be that much more compelling. And that's where I think you guys really knocked out of the park with this. And speaking of TikTok, Carlo, it's not Super Bowl related, but with the Olympics, the work you had done with Xfinity and Comcast, I think is equally as compelling and drove, you know, billions of views. So it would be really cool to understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think, you know, as Matt was saying, I think it's fundamental now to, you know, go on different channels and try different things. You know, a lot of brands are trying and a lot of brands are exploring, and I think we're, of course, at the beginning of it. And I think the brands that, you know, have more success, I feel are the brands that, you know, have maybe a presence, you know, on television and you know, and then bounce people off to, you know, like there's a lot of different ways to get to it. And I think it's, we're all trying to get to the best formula. But yeah, Comcast was a really interesting experiment for us because we, you know, they're of course the official broadcaster of the Olympics, so they have an institutional role, but I think we also wanted to explore and experiment on new platforms. So for the Summer Olympics, we launched this film that was based on Bugler's Anthem, which is the song that opens the Olympics broadcast. And the commercial was really fun and catchy. And then on TikTok, we launched a challenge where we invited regular people, everybody, and a number of influencers to reinterpret the song in their own way. And it started like an experiment, see what happens, and it ended up being incredibly popular, a lot more popular than the film, I have to say, because it ended up having 4 billion views, this challenge, which is one of those crazy numbers that you can put at the end of case studies, but you know, when you think about it, like, oh, 4 billion views. Anyways, it's been a great experiment for Comcast, and this is to say, you know, also brands that have more of an institutional role have to try and have to expand, you know, because you know, now around the Super Bowl, a lot of brands are trying to hijack attention from the brands who are investing in the Super Bowl. I think it's good for, I would say, every brand to try to expand the vision beyond traditional media. And in the case of Comcast, it was really successful.
That's so cool. And again, I love how you talk about the traditional institution that people may have preconceived notions about, whether they're positive or negative, but reinventing themselves and giving the younger audience a reason to engage in different ways. That's what stood out with both of those examples, and leveraging TikTok in such a cool way to do that. Well, that wraps the majority of our content for the day and everything we wanted to talk about. I'm curious if there's any audience or virtual questions at this time. Yes.
Yeah, hi, my name's Ashley Pearson. I work for Elvin. I work in media strategy. I have a question. I would equate what you guys do, marketing around the Super Bowl, with an actress doing it down to the Oscars. There's a tremendous amount of pressure to get it right because the whole world is watching. How early do you start your process of, if you know you're going to do Super Bowl, how early do you start the process of figuring out what you want to do and what you're going to do and how you're going to make it relevant and fun, and how much pressure is there on that?
Yeah, actually, so I'll take a crack at these from our side. So last year was our first year, and we waited way too late to get started on this thing. So just in talking with other brands, I think they tend to start thinking about it some a year in advance, right? Because especially some of the folks that are, or some of the brands that are engaged on a more regular basis. I think for us, I think we made the call during the season, and that's not what you want, right? That is for us, it was way too late. And so that's one of the lessons learned that we took away from last year is that if you're going to do this, you have to get it well out in front of the actual event, just given all of the moving parts. Like Drake signed his contract on set, so you don't want that, right? You don't want that. So yeah, definitely want to make sure that you're getting out in front of the event as far as you can. I can tell you that for us for next year, we're already thinking about the Super Bowl, right? So the Super Bowl is going to be it's going to be in Phoenix at State Farm Stadium, right? So lots of potential synergies there for us. We're big into football, and so we're already thinking about it. We don't have a concept or anything like that just yet, but yeah, we're already starting to think about it. So at least based on our experience from last year, definitely need to get out further ahead of the Super Bowl than an in-season decision. And based on that, at least in part, we're starting to think about that for next year.
Thanks a lot.
Hey Matt, you guys have such a great job with the sport partnerships, the athlete partnerships. I mean, all the sports. It seems like good. Are there any e-sport athletes you're talking to now or any programs? Is that something you guys are working on yet?
Not an e-sport athlete, but we've been in gaming since 2018 in one way or another, right? And we are bullish on gaming. I think one of the challenges with gaming is that they're just different flavors, right? So there's casual gaming, there's competitive gaming, and even with casual gaming, there are consoles, there are PC players, there are mobile users, right? So for us, we're giving a lot of thought into, what does a gaming strategy look like for us? We're getting a lot of outreach from leagues, from firms who are representing players and teams, because they've seen us in that space and they've seen us be active. But right now, we don't really have plans to partner with an esports athlete, but we'll see.
Yeah, hey, my name's Alex Grant. I work for a company called Rock the Bells, which is really focused on elevating hip hop sport from roots to modern day. One of the things I heard, this is from Matt, I heard you talk a lot about your sponsorships. One of the things you didn't mention is Overtime Elite. And I'm curious about how you're looking at both the expansion and NIL, and if that's part of that, or sort of what you're thinking about and where that came from. As I think about that consumer, when I think about financial services and having talked to you guys in the past, that isn't necessarily part of the set.
No, thanks for that. And by the way, cool name. Second of all, thanks for the plug because I was supposed to talk about that. So he's not a plant. Right. Okay, yeah, no. So Overtime Elite. So yeah, they've been around here for a little bit, but they've just really solidified what they're doing with high school athletes here within the last year or so. And yeah, we are a partner with those guys. We made the decision to partner with them prior to NIL really taking off, right? So it was a bit of a leap of faith for us, but there were a couple of things that in play for us. So one is that we want to make sure that we're reaching millennial and Gen Z consumers. You can certainly do that through the NBA and the various relationships that we have with the leagues. But if you look at the Overtime Elite audience, they skew much younger. And they're following these kids that could eventually make it to the NBA, right? And so if we have an opportunity to establish a relationship with Overtime Elite and potentially with some of these athletes who are eventually going to make it as pros, it's a good fit for us. And what those guys have been doing down there is great. Like they just had their King of the Court one-on-one tournament and a ton of buzz on social relative to that. So yeah, we're very excited about our relationship with Overtime, and yeah, looking forward to building on it.
I think we got time for one last question.
This might sound ridiculous, but have you guys ever discussed productizing the browser space? Like, you know how it's progressive, or somebody says, fewer accidents or the rate goes down or something like that. conversations because the Rogers race is so out there. You ever thought about prioritizing the thing? Just curious.
Short answer is no. But we hear that a lot though. Like it's Rogers Rate, it's Patrick Price, Burrow Bundle. Not signaling anything, but we saw that on Twitter last week, right? So short answer is no, but we do get that buzz a lot, and we know that that plays well in social, and that kind of happens organically, and we love it and we enjoy it. But in terms of going to an agent's office and saying, hey, I want the Patrick Price, and it's some sort of package that you get, no, we're not doing that.